Okay, we're going to start on kind of a grim note here.
Okay.
We have a lot to get to this morning, but Donald Trump's latest...
Wait, you're talking about the lead. I mean, it's the lead of the New York Times today.
I know.
And I've got to say, it's really important that we're talking about the possible ending of democracy. And it's really important that these stories are in just about every day to, again, keep explaining to people. So if they decide they want to throw away American democracy and go toward autocracy, they can never say they weren't warned.
That is true. Donald Trump's latest extreme remarks describing his political enemies as vermin that he needs to root out is sparking new concern about his authoritarian rhetoric. And that is the piece in the front page of the New York Times. And it notes this. He has insinuated that the nation's top military general should be executed and called for the termination of parts of the Constitution if he wins back the White House. He has said he would have no choice but to imprison political opponents. The paper continues. Mr. Trump's rise to power was almost immediately accompanied by debates over whether his ascendancy and that of other leaders around the world with similar political views signaled a revival of fascism. Fascism is generally understood as an authoritarian far-right system of government which hyper-nationalism is a central component. It also often features a cult of personality around a strongman leader, the justification of violence or retribution against opponents, and the repeated denigration of the rule of law, said Peter Hayes, a historian who has studied the rise of fascism. It feels like a history lesson.
Again, go down the list. People say, oh, it's not fascism. And then you go down a list of fascist tendencies of past fascist leaders, and he ticks them all off,
right,
except for one thing. And let's get to that. But keep reading.
Okay, past fascist leaders appealed to a sense of victimhood to justify their actions.
They're all snowflakes.
The idea is we're entitled because we've been victimized. We've been cheated and robbed, he said. One expert who has researched political rhetoric tells the Times that Mr. Trump had wielded language as a chisel to chip away at democratic norms. Normally, a president would use war rhetoric to prepare a nation for war against another nation, she said. Donald Trump uses war rhetoric domestically.
And that, Katty K, is what's so frightening, that his focus is not in taking over other countries. It's in taking over this country, undermining American democracy, undermining the rule of law, calling for the termination of the Constitution, calling still for the arresting and the imprisonment of his political opponent, something he did to me as a member of the media, something he did to the Biden family the last 2 weeks of the 2020 campaign when he was yelling at his attorney general to arrest the entire Biden family. But you look at it and here it is. I mean, the frightening thing is there are far too many Americans who seem disinterested in the degradation, not only of civility, not only of all of the character traits that their parents taught them growing up, that they learned in their communities, that they learned in their churches, but they seem completely disinterested in the fact that the leader they're following, well, he's an autocrat. He's talking like an autocrat, and he has promised them he is going to rule like an autocrat, arresting political opponents and deciding for himself what news shows stay on television and what news shows don't.
So over the last few years, you've had a lot of Trump supporters kind of hide behind this idea of seriously but not literally, right? Or literally but not seriously. That it's all kind of a joke when he says this sort of thing.
Right.
It's the press saying, oh, look, getting their hair on fire and saying this all sounds very autocratic. But a couple of conversations I've had recently with people close to the Trump campaign it's exactly that they point to as one of the first things they'll do, is this idea of political retribution and remaking the judicial system both to protect Donald Trump and to get vindication for perceived wrongs. I mean, when you ask them, well, you know, one interview I had, what changes in Trump's second term, the first thing that I was told is Mark Milley goes to jail. And then Tony Fauci goes to jail. And it is this idea of using the system of government to defend one person. I mean, you know, literally subverting the whole of government to do that and taking the Justice Department kind of inside the White House. So I think, you know, Dan Balz wrote this in the Washington Post just this week. It's now time to take him both seriously and literally, because the plans are there. I mean, the plans are already being laid out. And the number of historians who are now students of autocracy who are saying you need two things for an autocratic regime to thrive. One is the normalization of violence in kind of language, and we have seen, you know, some of that happening. And then the denigration of your opponents and treating them as not human. Words like vermin, for example. So you have got this kind of toxic situation at the moment where the groundwork is being laid from the campaign, but also from Trump supporters, to kind of create a situation where it's normal to think of using violence somehow to justify political ends, and then it doesn't take very long for that to start spiraling out of control, and both sides start seeing that as something that is justified.
Well, and Jonathan Lemire, it's what we heard from people that were, I guess, just too offended, or maybe perhaps too delicate to call a fascist, or to call fascism for years. People said, oh, yeah, but, you know, we don't have the violence component. Despite the fact Donald Trump throughout the first campaign time and again kept saying, beat the hell out of my opponents and I will pay your lawyer's fees, praising a congressman, as we said, for beating the hell out of a news reporter for asking a question about health care reform. Charlottesville, good people on both sides trying to justify that. January 6th then comes. There's really no ambiguity there. It's like Mussolini going after government buildings with violence, taking over government buildings with violence on his rise. Then we have January 6th. We have the example of Paul Pelosi, a guy, a Speaker of the House, his husband, Speaker of the House that he calls deranged and crazy and all these other things, dehumanizes, and then he still revels in an 83-year-old man having the hell beaten out of him. So the violence component of fascism is there. I just want to go through again this New York Times article, and let's just go through them. Because it's time that fascism is called fascism, and Americans know exactly what they're voting for. And, you know, I've heard people poo-poo this and go, oh, people on the far left. No, I'm a conservative. I'm on the right. There's a difference between conservatism, radicalism, and fascism. This is fascism. This is the Times quotes an expert on the topic. Fascism is generally understood, and this is boilerplate stuff, really, for what fascism is. Fascism is generally understood as an authoritarian, far-right system of government in which hyper-nationalism is a central component. Check. It also features a cult of personality around a strongman leader. Check. The justification of violence or retribution against opponents. Check. And the repeated denigration of the rule of law. Check, said Peter Hayes, a historian who has studied the rise of fascism. Past fascist leaders appealed to a sense of victimhood to justify their actions. Check. We're entitled because we've been robbed. We've been victimized. We've been cheated and robbed. Check, check, check. The whining, the snowflakery coming from the Trump people. I mean, a snowflake falls on their shoulders and they're victimized. They're victimized by history books on Hank Aaron. They're victimized by kids' books on Roberto Clemente. They're victimized by tweets. They're victimized. You name it. They are victimized by everything. They are such weak snowflakes, and they're using that victimization to justify violence against their opponents, Jonathan.
Yeah, this is such an important conversation to call out what we're seeing clearly and plainly. It reminds me of 2015, 2016, a lot of media organizations struggled to characterize some of the things he was saying. And we'd come up with phrases like racially tinged. And instead of eventually where we simply called things racist when they were racist. And I think that's where we are now, too, where it's time to say these things are fascist. Use the word. And I know we've been doing that on this show for a while, but it does seem like media organizations, others, are starting to really do the same and make clear what is happening here, what Trump has done before, and what is threatening to do. And I actually was at a journalism conference over the weekend. Our friend Molly Jong Fast was on a panel with me, and we talked about how we should be approaching this candidate this campaign as journalists, how we should say he is an insurrectionist candidate. And yes, while of course there will be focus on the day-to-day developments, there'll be focus on polls, there'll be focus on policy. One thing that I said there and we endorsed as a panel is the idea of we need to focus on the stakes of this election. It's not just the day-to-day events, it is the stakes. And frankly, the stakes are our democracy itself. When we hear Donald Trump put forth his plans for what a second term would look like and embrace this fascist rhetoric and policy.
Right.
Another thing that fascists do is they obliterate norms, and in Trump's case, he's coming at this country with so many different problems, with so many different, whether it be racist, fascist, cruel, just sick tendencies that you can't keep up with it. And you pointed out one, quite frankly, relatively, shouldn't be, small example, the Paul Pelosi example, where he was brutally attacked by a man inspired by Trump in his home. I just want to put a frame around this. He's still making fun of it, insinuating it was coming to him and there was something with his life, that this is a guy who was inspired by Trump, who broke into his home and beat him, I believe with a hammer.
Yeah.
And imagine, I don't know, when Steve Scalise was shot. If any one person,
not just any one person, if Barack Obama,
anybody,
because let's make that this isn't somebody on a back bench. This is the leader of the Republican Party. So it would be as if Barack Obama continued mocking Steve Scalise for getting shot while practicing baseball for years into the future. My God. What would happen in the press? What would happen? What would Republicans say? There would be rightfully a meltdown. And now there's silence.
Yeah.
Because this is Donald Trump, who is glorifying the beating up of an 82, 83-year-old man.
And the